Okay, it is now 5 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and call the November 4th, 2019 Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting to order. And the first order of business is public comment. And I have a pink sheet from Dave Berger. So Dave, we look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, council members. You're going to hear more about this, I know, later in the meeting. But I had some comments regarding a meeting coming up this Wednesday evening in Burien that I'd like to call to your attention, as well as the public who may be watching or listening in. This meeting is the State Department of Commerce SeaTac Airport Impacts Study public input. This is the second of two or three, I believe, public input meetings on the study that the State Department of Commerce, as well as your city and the other cities have funded, to look at the impacts of aircraft noise, public health, and other impacts that are created by the SeaTac Airport. On Wednesday, the Stantec company consulting team that's working for the State Department of Commerce will be presenting their preliminary results of their investigation of aircraft noise, health impacts, and all the other impacts that the airport is creating. And as I indicated, Bill is going to describe that study in a little more detail later. But I wanted to just point out why I think it's important that as many of you as possible, and members of the public who are affected or interested should attend this meeting and listen into the Stantec team's presentation. Back in February, at a Port Commission meeting, the environmental programs manager for the airport acknowledged that the SAMP, the Airport Expansion Plan, which we refer to as the SAMP, draft environmental impact study that's now being prepared is using the outdated 65 DNL noise metric to analyze the potential impacts of the expansion of the airport, the proposed expansion of the airport. So that unfortunately means that aircraft noise impacts in the environmental impact study, the draft EIS, will completely ignore the noise impact, the very real noise impact on my neighborhood, Marine Hills, as well as the other neighborhoods in Federal Way, when that DEIS comes out next year. So therefore, the facts and figures that come out of the State Department of Commerce study are extremely important to have in hand when the time comes for this city and the other cities to the north, when the time comes to challenge that environmental impact statement. So this is the first insight that the public will have. Bill and I had a preview of the preliminary findings in a meeting last Monday, but this will be the opportunity for the public to see those preliminary findings on noise and health and other impacts and comment on those before the study is actually completed. So thank you for the opportunity to bring to your attention that study. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And for those that are listening, it's the Impact Mitigation Study Update by the Department of Commerce. It's going to be held at the Burien City Hall Public Meeting Room, which is obviously in Burien on 400 Southwest 152nd Street. So if you can attend, I think it would be a great service to the city and for the community as a whole to get your perspective. So thank you. Concluding that, unless there's any other public comment, we will go ahead and move on to committee business. And seeing none, the first order of committee business is approval of the minutes from the October 7th LETC meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move approval of the October 7th, 2019 Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting minutes.
Second.
Hearing a second, do I have any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, next we have John Mulkey, and John is going to be talking about 4 different projects. We get the Brook Lake Center Connector project acceptance. We'll get the Berryville Lane Use Control 85% design report and authorization to bid. And then we've got the South 348th entrance sign, 85% design report and authorization to bid. And finally, the Complete Streets ADA upgrades, which is also 85% design report and authorization to bid. John, we're going to have you for a while, so look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kopang, Council and Committee members. My name is John Mulkey, and I am a Senior Capital Engineer for the City of Federal Way. This presentation is for the Brook Lake Center Connector project acceptance. These are some project photos. We had a nice ribbon-cutting ceremony for the project and some pictures of the completed walkway that was installed over the summer. So the policy question is, should the council accept the Brook Lake Center connector constructed by Talakai Construction LLC as complete? Financial impacts, the cost of the city for the Brook Lake Center connector was included with the approved budget under the 2019-2020 Surface Water Management CIP budget 304 Project 284. In accordance with the approved budget, this item was funded by a SWM utility tax. Ongoing costs associated with operations and maintenance will be performed and funded through Parks Department maintenance. Funding requirements for operation and maintenance of infrastructure reviewed and adjusted as required during the budget process. This is a project overview map, and it shows the area. The existing boardwalk is in purple, and the new connector that we put in is in red. So the background, the project connected the terminus of the West High-Wills Wetlands Park Boardwalk Trail to the Brook Lake Center property on the east side of Brook Lake. And the project is entirely on city-owned property and provide a second access point to the West High-Wills Wetlands Park Boardwalk Trail. The park and the trail are critical to SWM's public education and outreach efforts. They have the Storming the Sound with salmon release events that has grown significantly since 2014. And this eliminates logistics, safety, and parking issues for releases, because previously they would have to go to the northern end on 348th, and all the students would have to walk down that entire, about a mile of boardwalk to get to the out. Now it's about 500 feet. So we've improved that. And again, we'll connected the Brook Lake Center to the existing boardwalk, allows additional access for facilities for students and volunteers, improved logistic efficiency during release events, and will allow SWM to sustain the event, and the completed connector trail will provide all city residents another access point to the park. So the project status is, prior to release of retainage on a public works construction project, the city council must accept the work as complete to meet Department of Revenue and State Department of Labor Industries requirements. The Brook Lake Center connector project constructed by Talakai Construction LLC is complete. The final construction contract amount is $281,231.50, which is $28,123.15 below the $309,354.65, including contingency budget, that was approved by the City Council on January 15, 2017. And this is the acceptance of construction is complete, and therefore no additional funds are proposed to be spent as a part of this agenda item. So the option considers to authorize final acceptance of the Brook Lake Center connector constructed by Talakai Construction LLC in the amount of $281,321.50 as complete, or two, did not authorize final acceptance of the completed Brook Lake Center connector constructed by Talakai Construction LLC as complete, and provide direction to staff. And the mayor recommends forwarding option one to the November 19, 2019 City Council consent agenda for approval. And I'm available. Is there any questions?
John, thank you for the presentation. Committee members, any questions? Council members, Deputy Mayor? Oh, Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any question. I just want to compliment for the good work that your staff did. Completed the project under the budget, saved the city more than $28,000. So,
Thank you.
that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a great addition to our parks. I know that was built with surface water management funds, which is a great use of that fund because of the event that is held there annually, which is a great resource for the school district, and I think only enhances the opportunity that we have as a city to create more of a center there at Brook Lake for future use. So I think it's a good strategic investment, and appreciate the job well done. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option one to the November 20th, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
A point of order,
It's,
real quick, I believe the next council meeting is on November
it
19th.
is November 19th, yes. What does it say there?
It says November
November
20th.
20th, 2018.
Oh,
Okay.
I messed
So,
up on my
let's,
number, that one.
Yeah, let's do, actually, the mayor recommends forwarding option one. Okay, so, we need to change that.
Yes, and
November
2019 is the correct year.
Yeah,
Thank you for catching
2019.
that as well.
That was,
So at this point, we have the motion pending. I would suggest just withdrawing the motion and
Yes.
redoing
Can
it
we
with
withdraw the
the
motion?
correct date.
Yes, we can
Okay.
withdraw the motion.
okay,
Yes,
thank
thank
you. Now, let's try again.
Okay, let's try again. I move to forward option one to the November 19, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
Any further discussion? No. No time machine available? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Yeah, that would be a great use of a time machine, go back to a previous council meeting. All right, John, next item is the variable lane use control, 85% design report.
All right, and going to this one. So the policy question on this one is, should the city council authorize staff to complete design and bid the citywide variable lane use controls and return to the LUTC and council for bid award, further reports, and authorization? Financial impacts. The cost to the city for the citywide variable lane use control project was included within the approved budget under the Public Works Department Capital Project 306, Project 213. In accordance with the approved budget, this item is funded by a grant from FHWA of $601,890 and mitigation, traffic, and impact funds of $150,473. Upon completion of the citywide variable lane use control project, future costs will be funded through streets and traffic maintenance. Funding requirements for operation and maintenance of infrastructure reviewed and adjusted as required during the budget process. So background, under FHWA's Accelerated Innovation Deployment Program, the city applied for and received a grant to expand utilization of the variable lane use control signs to optimize the efficiency of intersections where the ideal lane configuration and in some cases associated signal phasing may vary by time of day. There were 4 locations selected for this application. First is Enchanted Parkway and South 348th Street. So signs in that location are going to vary the use of the northbound outside through lane to be a second right turn lane in the morning peak, a through-only lane in the evening peak, and allow both movements other times of day. So you can see that this lane right here with the circle on it, more normal morning and evening. And then South 24th Street at Pack Highway, the normal is to have a straight in the mid lane, and then in evenings and weekends, to change that to a double left at that intersection. The third location, 11th Place South at South 320th Street, will vary the use of the northbound outside lane to allow left turns during evening peak hour. So right now, it's a right and a straight, and it will change to evening to be right, left, or straight. And then the last one is South 336th Street at First Way South, and it'll vary the use of the lane to the through lane to allow left turns during evening peak hour. So it'll increase that from just a straight lane to a straight left. Project status, the following provides a brief synopsis of progress of the project to date. Currently, the project design is approximately 85% complete, which includes the following completed tasks: completed survey and field review, project design at 85%, and SEPA exemption. Ongoing tasks include NEPA, contract specifications, and plans to 100%. Funding and expenditures, with the grant, available funding of FHWA AID grant and mitigation and traffic impact funds of $752,363, and our estimated expenditures, including design, construction, 10% construction contingency, and construction management, match that amount of $752,363. So after receiving bids, the total project costs will be refined and presented to committee and council for bid award and authorization. We anticipate bidding this project in January, and construction is anticipated to start in spring 2020 with an estimated substantial completion date in summer of 2020. So the options considered are to, 1, authorize staff to complete the design and bid the citywide variable lane use controls and return to LUTC and council for bid award, further reports, and authorization, or 2, do not authorize staff to bid this project and provide direction to staff. Mayor's recommendation, the mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the November 19, 2019 City Council consent agenda for approval. And I'm available for questions for this project as well.
Thank you, John. Any questions from the committee members? Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. Do you anticipate that this will help traffic quite a bit?
I'm going to get Rick Perez,
It's-
because he's the one who,
okay.
I'm managing the construction and design, and he's going to be
It's a
able to
lot of
handle it.
money to be spending, and I'm just wondering how much it's going to actually help traffic.
So, yeah, I mean, first I had to convince the feds that this was a good idea. So, yes, it is expected that the benefit-cost ratio on this was such that the payback period and societal cost would be less than a year. So, yeah, you should be seeing a difference. And not just in terms of delay, but also safety, because people that get upset at how long it's taking to get through an intersection often make rash decisions. So over the long haul, we'll be measuring that too, is what the safety benefits are.
So you have data currently, and after this is done, you'll do another study to
Yeah,
compare?
actually, that was a requirement of the grants, that not only would we conduct an analysis of how effective it was, but also present that to professional organizations as well, so that, you know, people could take advantage of it if there is an advantage demonstrated.
How will the signage work to allow people to understand what's going on?
So there will be, oh, okay.
Slide back up kind of what you can see. And
My question too.
Basically, in addition to what signs are on the mast arm, there will also be an additional mast arm further back from the intersection. So at the beginning of the turn lanes, people will know what lane they can take which movements. So, for instance, at Enchanted, we're already going to have, you know, this mast arm here is going to have a variable sign that is posted over this lane. And then in addition, there'll be another sign further back on the north side of Olive Garden, essentially, that will have a sign over that same lane and it will be displaying the same legend that says, yes, this is right turn only, or it's through only, or it's both.
So those signs will be lighted,
Yes.
so they can change,
Yes,
obviously.
they're
at the time of day.
internally illuminated LEDs, so, yeah, so it'll be variable. There's a few other instances around the region. One is in Bellevue, in front of Bellevue Square on Northeast 8th, where when pedestrian volumes are high, they prohibit the right turn from 8th Street onto Bellevue Way. There's one in Kirkland where the lane use changes from a shared dual left to just a single left turn lane. So just to handle their morning peak.
I have another question.
Oh, go ahead.
So who will control the signs? Will they automatically change at this certain time, or will there be a person handling?
Okay, so this is one of the things that is part of the innovation, is most agencies do it just by simple time of day. And what we're proposing is to have enough detection in place that the signal essentially monitors which lanes are the most backed up, and then communicate that to the signal controller, and the signal controller will switch it. Once it switches, it needs to stay that way for a while. You don't want it bouncing back and forth every 5 seconds. So, yeah, we're going to experiment with that, probably start with half an hour, and then if we think 15 minutes works better, we can change that. And yeah, so this will all be automated, ideally. If that part doesn't work, then we'll revert to time of day.
One more question. So in the case of a car accident, let's say someone's not paying too much attention and they're in the wrong lane, and they make an effort to get out of the lane to correct themselves, and they hit another car. Will there be cameras on the signs so that when they go to court and fight their ticket?
So, no, we haven't got that set up.
Okay.
Now, I will say that 3 of these locations have Safe City cameras, and actually, as part of the adaptive system, we'll also be installing more cameras strictly for traffic surveillance, and so that information will come back to the Traffic Control Center. So the person who's monitoring at that point in time would be able to identify that and hopefully capture it on video.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Copang.
As well as the signs aren't, also the signal itself.
Okay,
John, if you could get in the
Oh,
microphone.
excuse
yeah.
me. The signals themselves are also, if it's a straight or a left, those arrows, if they're an arrow on those, we're going to be able to change the arrow on the signal as well to provide direction. So they'll have the
Fantastic.
signs and the arrows on the signals.
yeah,
Good. Okay, John, thank you for that.
yeah.
Yes.
So if I can just clarify one thing to make sure we're all on the same page. So this project is being funded through a grant. It's from the federal government. They're paying approximately $602,000 of the total cost. The city's contribution to this project is ballpark $150,000, which is
Yeah.
traffic impact fees, which is restricted money. There's no general fund money, there's no lift, there's no REIT, there's no even utility tax that's being used for this. So the traffic impact fees are limited to traffic mitigation. That's fees that are collected from private developers as part of their projects. So, I mean, this is kind of a pretty clear-cut use of that money.
Right.
So, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
And those, appreciate staff clearly identifying the funding sources for this project, so there's no question. Any additional questions? Well, based on that, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the November 19th, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay, motion carries unanimously. John, number 3,
All right.
South 348th entrance sign.
Okay, moving forward with this one. Our policy question is, should the city council authorize staff to complete design and bid the South 348th Street entrance sign and return to LUC and council for bid award, further reports, and authorization? Financial impacts. The cost for the city of the South 348th Street entrance sign was included within the approved budget under the Fund 109 Hotel Motel Lodging Tax for 2017-18, 2018-19, 2019, and 2019-2020. In accordance with the approved budget, this item is funded by hotel motel lodging tax of $32,200 for each budget period. Upon completion of the South 348th Street entrance sign, the future cost will be approximately $1,030 per year for electricity. There have been no other costs associated with the current sign to date, as the only issue is covered under warranty. Background, so we're construct a new LED entrance sign in the median of South 348th Street between Enchanted Parkway and Pacific Highway South, visible to eastbound and westbound traffic, and provide enough information upon upcoming events within the city similar to the current sign on South 320th Street. And so this is an overhead view of the area currently, and we're going to be placing this sign in approximately this location here. We'll be moving a tree to make sure we have visibility. And this is just like a close-up of, the diagram of where the lines are going to become. We're going to be feeding power from the existing signal and how that connects. And a preview of the sign. So preliminary work, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee at their June 12, 2019 meeting approved $32,200 of the available funding to use for the advancement of electrical work via the limited public works process. This work was to install new conduit and junction boxes prior to the completion of the frontage improvements for the new convenience store being constructed to avoid higher cost for restoration, and is complete. So project funding and expenditures, we have cost for design, conduit and vault installation, construction, 10% construction contingency and construction management of $85,000, and available funding of $96,600. The status is the brief synopsis of the progress is currently the project is approximately 85% complete, which includes site review, project design at 85%, conduit and vault installation prior to sign installation, and ongoing tasks include completion of the request for quotes and specifications to 100% and project design to 100%. The options considered are authorize staff to complete the design and bid the South 348th Street entrance sign and return to LUC and council for bid award, further reports and authorization, or 2, do not authorize staff to bid this project and provide direction to staff. Mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the November 19th, 2019 City Council consent agenda for approval. And available for questions.
Thank you, John. I know this project has moved pretty quickly through the process, so thank you for that. Do I have any questions? Okay. Hearing none. Do we have a motion?
I do have a question.
Oh, you do have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, please, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, John. I was just wondering, for the option to power the sign, will the solar option be cost-effective? I'm just wondering.
One, I don't think we've even looked at it, but two, the size of a solar panel to power the sign would probably be the size of the sign, and, to get it out there, I don't think that's really an option that we've looked at. We've got additional, the power of these LED signs aren't very, $1,000 is $1,000. I don't disrespect that for lighting overall and stuff like that. They are cheaper, and than a lot of the older signs and incandescents and things like that. And the prices on things have actually dropped tremendously as well. So where that sign on 320th, just for the sign itself was about $50,000, that same sign today is $10,000. So we're going to experience a lot of savings on that as well. But no, we never really looked at a solar option for that. But I don't know what the power requirements off of hand either. So I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I was just
No problem.
wondering.
All right. Well, unless there's any further questions, so we'd entertain a motion at this point.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the November 19, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, John. Bring it home. We got the Complete Streets 88 upgrade.
All right. This is a project overview of the project area. The Complete Streets is just, we're going to be working on the intersection of South 320th and SR 99 to bring that up to ADA standards. So the policy question is, should the City Council authorize staff to complete the design and bid the Complete Streets and return to LUC and Council for bid award, further reports, and authorization under the 2020 Asphalt Overlay Project? Financial impacts. This project was included and projected to be completed within the approved budget under Capital Project 306, number 222. The project is funded from a grant from the Transportation Improvement Board in the amount of $100,000 and the remainder from the street fund and traffic impact fees. Ongoing costs associated with operations and maintenance will be performed and funded through street and traffic maintenance, as this will only replace existing equipment. Background information, this project will replace existing non-compliant curb ramps and other pedestrian facilities at the intersection of South 320th Street and SR 99 and bring them into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act as part of the city's effort to comply with our submitted ADA transition plan. The Public Works Department previously requested to include this work to be a bid as part of the city's 2020 Asphalt Overlay Project as a separate schedule. Due to the location and type of work, this project would not bid favorably on its own, so including this in the project would benefit the project bid prices due to similar construction work done in preparation for the overlay. Currently, the project design is, that should say 85% complete, which includes completed survey, project design to 85%, and SEPA exemption. Ongoing tasks are to bring the project to 100%, and the contract specifications and plans to 100%. So funding and expenditures, survey, design, 2020 construction, 10% construction synergy and construction management by city staff is $199,932. Available funding is $200,000 with the DLB Complete Street grants and street funds. So after receiving bids, the total project cost will be refined and presented to the committee and council for bid award and authorization. Staff anticipates bidding this project in February 2020 with the 2020 Asphalt Overlay Project. Construction of the overlay project is anticipated to start in spring of 2020 with an estimated substantial completion date in the summer of 2020. So the option considered are: 1, authorize staff to proceed with design of the Complete Streets ADA upgrades, allow the Complete Streets project to be bid under the 2020 Asphalt Overlay Project, and return to LC and Council for bid, authorization of bid, or completion of bid. So do not authorize staff to proceed with the project and provide direction to staff. I'm sorry, I messed that one up.
That's okay. John, basically what we're voting on, though, is to take this to 100%.
To authorized bid.
Okay, authorized bid. Okay.
Authorized to go to bid, and we
Okay.
would come back after bid.
Yeah, okay, perfect. All right, any questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, John. For a project like this, is there any other intersections within the city that we'll need to look at in the future, like 312th or 348th with similar needs? Or
Yes.
Okay.
We
Okay.
have a multitude of availabilities for future grant funding for ADA upgrades.
Okay.
We have, more than enough money to cover
Good.
any available grants.
Thank you.
Okay. But there's a lot of projects coming.
There's a lot of projects out there for ADA. With part of this transition plan, we've identified, a lot of upgrades that we need to do.
Yeah, and I think our initial survey was just in the city center core.
Yes.
And there was a number, I think, remember that discussion we had?
It was a large number just in that
A
area.
few months ago, I know Desiree gave us that presentation, so.
Yes.
This was not unexpected, so thank you. Council member, or Deputy Mayor John, or Honda?
All right, thank you. Will this include having the signals longer so when you're crossing the street? Does that have anything to do with that?
No.
No?
It doesn't have anything to do with signal timing at all. It's just the ADA features, the ramps and the buttons, and getting those to bring those up to standards, any of those things like that. So it doesn't have anything to do with signal transitions or timing or anything like that. It's purely the ADA facilities.
Because at one point, I remember we talked about
Yes.
having those longer.
That is still.
Right, and that was an
Yeah.
issue with signing that they were going to talk about with Rick and making some
Okay.
adaptions
Yeah.
with that, but that would not be as part of conjunction of the actual work
Okay,
Yeah.
per se.
No, but there will be,
Thank you.
I think it's a 5-second delay is what we're looking at.
Is that Rick?
For pedestrians, right, Rick? Want to confirm that?
So what you're talking about there is the leading pedestrian
Yes.
intervals. That's not an ADA issue.
Right.
So, but lengthening the pedestrian crossing times. So when we update the signal timing, which we will be doing with the adaptive, then we will be bringing all those intersections up to compliance with that. Is basically the trigger is a major retiming project. And so that's what we'll be doing as we implement the adaptive system.
and do you know, and when will that be done?
So we're looking at now, the latest schedule we had was completion probably in about a year.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the next presentation, Deputy Mayor Honda. So,
It's coming.
Awesome.
It's
Okay,
coming.
Thank you.
okay. All right. So do I have a motion at this point?
I move to forward option 1 to the November 19th, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
Okay, hearing a motion and a second. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. John, thank you, you made it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Naveen Chandra, and talk about the Citywide Adaptive Signal Control System, ITS improvements, Phase 1 and 2, and Phase 3 bid results. All right.
Good evening, Chair Kopang and member, and the council members. I'm here to present Citywide Adaptive Traffic Signal Control, ITS improvements, Phase 1 and 2, and Phase 3 project bid award and transfer of funds. Policy question: should City Council award the Citywide Adaptive Traffic Signal Control ITS improvements, Phase 1 and 2, and Phase 3 project, and authorize the transfer of funds to the project? Background: the Citywide Adaptive Traffic Control System monitors traffic conditions in real time and modifies the signal timing every single cycle, which reduces delays and stops, resulting in improvement of both safety and air quality. The Citywide Adaptive Traffic Control System consists of 3 contracts, which are procurement and installation of the system hardware and software, which was awarded previously, Traffic Control Center, which was awarded in September, and this is the current project which we are talking, that is the ITS improvements Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 3. Background: 6 bids were received on October 25th, 2019 for the Citywide Adaptive Traffic Control ITS improvements Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 3 project. The lowest responsible bidder is Northeast Electric LLC with a total base bid of $1,649,980. Background: the bids received were higher than the anticipated given the following several factors. This project is implementing 11 more intersections than the minimum number required by the grant. The cost for electrical construction work has increased upwards of 25% since project was initially started due to material and labor costs. Given the relatively close bids, it is unlikely to yield lower bid if the project is rebid. Project scope could be reduced, but future implementation of reduced scope would cost higher in the future. Traffic impact fees of over $1.7 million has been collected in the past 3 years. Adaptive signal control project is an appropriate use of these funds, as the purpose of TIP funds is to offset development impact by funding traffic system improvement and mitigate increased traffic. And staff also recommends transferring traffic safety funds of $75,000, which is Fund 112, and TIP funds of $800,000 to the project. Total project available funding. Project 202, that is Phase 1 and 2, as $2 million. Project 216, Phase 3, as $800,000. And we are requesting the transfer of safety funds, that's Fund 112 of $75,000. Transfer of traffic impact fee of $800,000, which totals up to $3,675,000. Project estimated expenditures for the total project, that would be the current project citywide adaptive traffic signal control ITS improvements, Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 3. The bid amount, the base bid is $1,649,980. Construction contingency of $80,000. Traffic control center, which has been awarded, that is $125,000. Transport group, which is who are providing design and construction engineering support, that would be $458,242. City staff expenditures at $80,000. Western Systems, that's the detection design, and then which is $17,000, and then the Western System software design, which is $1,175,917,000. King County towards the inspection and city support, that's $60,000. For WSDOT, it would be $20,000. The total project cost would be $3,660,139. Options considered: award the citywide adaptive traffic control ITS improvements Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 3 project to Northeast Electric LLC, the lowest responsible bidder, in the amount of $1,649,980, which is the base bid, and approve a contingency of $80,000 for a total of $1,729,980, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract and authorize the fund transfer to the project. Option 2 would be to reject the bid for the citywide adaptive traffic control ITS improvements, Phase 1 and 2 and Phase 3 project, and direct staff to rebid the project and return to the committee for further action. Mayor recommends forwarding option 1 to the November 19th, 2019 City Council consent agenda for approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Naveen. Committee members, any questions? Council members? Okay. Councilmember Trent,
I'm ready to make a motion.
please do.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the November 19, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Naveen,
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Saturday Long. We've got 2 items with Saturday. We've got the Transportation Demand Management Implementation Agreement with WSDOT, and then the Commute Trip Reduction Program Implementation Agreement with King County. So we'll start with the first one, obviously Transportation Demand Management. Saturday, thank you.
Yes. Good evening, Chair Gopang, Council Committee. My name's Harry Long. I'm with the Public Works Traffic Division. The policy question before you: should the council authorize the mayor to enter into agreement with the Washington State Department of Transportation, allowing the state to reimburse the city its share of the technical assistance funding for implementing the state commute trip reduction law? Brief background: under the state law, the city is required to develop and implement a plan to reduce commute trip, and this law only impact or affect major employer that have at least 100 or more full-time employees. Currently, we have 9 site or major employer affected by the program. This is not in particular order. The top 3, if you're curious, major employer are St. Francis, about 964 full-time employee or employee, World Vision, about 750, and the Vita, about 539 employee. To assist the city in this effort, the state also provides technical funding, which require a 4 years agreement. The current agreement with the state has expired, so a new agreement is required to receive additional funding. The new agreement would cap funding to the city at $38,869 for the first 2 years. The remaining 2 years are subject to fund appropriation by the state legislature. Once that's been approved by the state legislature, the agreement will be amended. As in the past, due to workload and expertise, the mayor's proposes to use the state funding allocation to contract with King County for their CTOR support services. Staff will present this contract to the LUTC and council as a separate agenda item, which the next one. The option before council are option number 1, authorize the mayor to enter agreement with WSDOT to accept the state's CTOR technical fund in the amount of $77,738 for the 2019 to 2023. Option 2, do not authorize the mayor to enter an agreement with WSDOT and implement the CTOR program as required by the state law and local CTOR ordinance without the state technical fund. If this option is selected, the city would need to allocate additional budget in the amount of $77,738 for the 2019 and 2023 year. Mayor recommendation forward option 1 to the November 19th City Council consent agenda for approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Saturday, thank you for your presentation. Committee members, any questions? Council members? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the November 19th, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Saturday, on to the commute trip reduction implementation agreement with King County.
Yes. The policy question, should the council authorize the mayor to enter an agreement with King County for CTOR program implementation? Again, it's just brief background. The city is under state law and local ordinance to develop program to reduce commute trip. Currently, we have, like I specified earlier, we have 9 side effects by the program. And the current drive alone rate, or people driving to work alone, for the 2017-2018, it's about 79%. So majority of the people coming to work at those work sites usually drive alone. And over the last 10 years, it pretty much steady between 76 to 79%, up to 80%. Compared to other agencies around the area, we're pretty much in line with them, with Renton being the exception because of the unique workforce. Over the last 20 years, the city has contracted with King County for their service to implement the state commute reduction program. This is due to workload and lack of in-house expertise. The existing agreement with King County has expired, and the mayor proposed to enter a new 2-year agreement. The agreement would be fully funded with the King County estimate about $34,668, and the grant from the state would be $38,869, so it's be 100% funded. The mayor believed the agreement with King County is the most cost-effective way to implement the program as required by state law. Most jurisdictions will have either half-time or full-time employee working on as an ETC to implement the program. The option before council are option number 1, authorize the mayor to enter an agreement with King County in the amount of $34,668 for CTR implementation. Option number 2, do not authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement with King County and hire a part-time CTR coordinator. The city will need to identify and supplement additional budget on a yearly basis to cover employee costs and program startup. Mayor recommendation, forward option 1 to the November 19, 2019 City Council consent agenda for approval. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Saturday. Committee members, any questions? Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I try to understand this. So if we do this, the city would have to hire a .5 FTE to manage this program, right?
So option one would be to use the money allocated by the state
Okay.
to contract with King County to perform the implementation. Option two, if council elect to have in-house person do it, would be half-time FTE.
Okay. So if we contract with King County, the amount is 34?
34,000.
Okay, so
yeah,
about 35,000.
So about 17, a little bit over $17,000 per year.
So it's more cost-effective to contract with them?
Yes.
would you say?
City of Kent has a little bit more work site than City of Federal, and they have about part-time FTE. CTOR coordinator, that's about $65,000 a year.
I'm wondering, I mean, what benefit do we get from this? Because based on your presentation, our employees for the last 10 years still drive alone to work at around 79%. There was not much improvement. Why do we still continue with this program?
Yeah, those are based, the 79% is based on a survey for all affected sites in Federal Way. And the money allocated by the state is a bare minimum, essentially going out to work with major employers to ensure that they are doing the program. There's nothing left to actually supplement additional funding to encourage or incentive for, let's say, World Vision to go beyond what's required.
I see.
Most jurisdictions like Bellevue or Seattle will have more than enough money, funding, to actually go out there and promote and a big program. So for 17,000 a year, it's pretty hard to come up with a creative way or make it work. One of the presentation, all the South County jurisdiction, we're pretty much the same boat, given that majority of our workforce are driving from the south, doesn't have a lot of transit services. So the major mode split are carpool, van pool, and flex schedule. So that's pretty much limited.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? All right. Yes. Councilmember Safadas.
Okay, so this is another curiosity type of question. So can we, if we can find the funds, can we do a part-time and also hire, work with King County to maximize Federal Way's program or service delivery?
We can, staff can look into that. So every major affected site have their own designated ETC coordinator. Their task is to encourage their fellow employees to use alternate mode. But like I presented earlier, it's unique workforce in the South Sound. Hospital is pretty challenging in terms of trying to get people to take transit, especially there's not a lot of transit available at St. Francis or Virginia Mason. Compare that to Swedish Hospital in downtown Seattle, which is much easier. On top of that, there's a lot more incentive. A lot of affected site in Bellevue and Seattle would have a pretty heavily subsidized incentive, and there's require a lot more funding.
Right, so I think it's to follow up on his question, then what would it take to really change or affect change so that the percentage is lowered? Other than what we're currently doing, because, yeah, it's between 80% and 76% for the last 10 years. So then, yeah.
So, City of Kent, for example, have a full-time, half-time ETC work on the program, plus they provide additional incentive. Their driver loan rate's pretty similar. Renton's being one exception because they are more Boeing's the major employer and other, so that's more like a higher paying job and office worker.
Right.
So that's a little bit of, it's different than Fedaway Hospital. When we have warehouser in the past, the drive-only rate was much lower because there's more subsidies provided by warehouser. So one of the key effective means to reduce drive alone is gas price. When gas price went up, more people are carpool and pool and take transit. When gas price lower, people drive more. On top of that, we have a lot of free parking space, and a lot of, let's say downtown Seattle and Bellevue, they charge for parking space. There's not a lot of parking space available. So those are, could be zoning, could be some other factor, but those gas and parking availability is one of the key elements.
So we have no control over gas. So I think I'm just asking to see what we can do to really change, or is this the most that could be done? Is it at 79%, which is normal, and we?
79% is, like staff mentioned, it's the last 10 years. We've seen as low as 76, 73% when Weyerhaeuser was
Right.
as part of the major employer. And that's a workforce conversion rather than, they're more office workers. Now we have more of a, hospital workforce. And staff can look at what other incentive, but that's cost.
Saturday, thank you. Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. Can you go back to the major employers, please?
Yes.
My question is, with Sound Transit coming into the city to start work, they're moving in a number of employees, right? Weren't they moving in 120 some employees? Isn't that what we were told?
Yes, is the short version. Not yet, though. So they're working on staffing some with Kiewit, who's already in the city currently.
Okay.
So the 120 is the number of staff allocated to the project, some of which are already here and have been for years. The large part of that number comes when construction actually starts, not the legwork now. So we're probably a year away from that. And even with that, this is what you're seeing on the screen in front of you is a reflection of the past, not a projection of the future. So when we're here in 2023, they may hit that list, but frankly,
Okay.
even the next time we're here, it's not going to reflect that.
Okay. Well, I was thinking if they were on the list that the numbers would be better, because I would hope Sound Transit folks know how to use alternate transportation.
As long as they have an office in the city, once they reach that 120, over 100 threshold, we would send a notification to them specifying that, hey, you are potentially over 100% full-time employee threshold, would you please confirm? So if they're over 100%, 100 employee, then it would be subject to the law.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
All right. Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if we can somehow reach out to those big employers and figure out ways to reduce, driving alone
Yes.
to work. For example, within my division, we have about 650 employees within King County and Snohomish County. And each employee who live in King County, we buy the Orca car for them so that they can take the train, sounder, bus, even water taxi
Yes.
to go to work. I know it is expensive, but if those big companies, I'm pretty sure they have the financial resources that they can do something with the CTR.
Yes, so by state law, every 2 years, each work site are required to do what we call a CTR survey. That's how we get 79%. And from that, there's a certain question that the state, the county asks what motor they're using and what motor they're likely to use if it's provided. And it's depending on each work site, they would tailor the program to fit based on the survey data. So every year, King County, under the contract, King County work with us to identify your program's not working, you're not meeting your threshold or the established goal. You need to add additional element or remove additional elements. So we work with them on a yearly basis, and we meet every quarterly to discuss what options are available. So we share ideas every quarter among all the affected site in Federal Way, and also include a site from Auburn to share resources such as, hey, I have a van pool coming from Tacoma from this time. If you have World Vision, if you have anyone that's coming to Tacoma, please let them know. So there's resources available. Like I said, the challenging part is that a lot of people are carpool and van pool, and it's really hard to find the right time. But there are resources available, right share within King County. You can go in and punch where you're coming from, what time you're going, and what time you're leaving, and we'll try to match you up with surrounding area.
Saturday, thank you for your presentation and the supporting the discussion on all the different options we can look at to promote ride sharing and all the other alternatives to commuting besides single occupancy cars. But I think at this point, we're talking about a $34,669 contract, and I think that we've got, I think we should make a motion and move on.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed agreement to the November 19, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Saturday, thank you. Okay, next we have Rick Perez. We'll talk about the City Center Access Phase 1 Environmental Process Update and the Preferred Alternative.
Yes, and if I can find it, all the others, here we go.
Rick, while you're putting everything together, I just want to commend both you and the Public Works staff, as well as Community Development, for your outreach efforts and making sure the community as a whole is aware of what's going on. This should not be a surprise to anybody, but it still will be, but not for lack of effort. So thank you very much. I know there's been multiple open houses, both here and in the community, so thank you for that. But anyway, this is an exciting potential project for the future, so look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll be sharing more updated information about what the themes of the public feedback we've been getting through all those open house meetings and stakeholder meetings, et cetera. So, policy question, should City Council adopt a preferred alternative for the City Center Access Phase 1 Environmental Process Update? With respect to financial impact, this project is funded under a capital project budget in the amount of $2.422 million over the combined 2019 and 2020 budgets. And it's a combination of real estate excise tax, traffic impact fees, and some general funds. So, big projects like this, first thing you do, establish a project purpose and need. And the purposes were to improve economic vitality and quality of life by addressing the congested corridors, poor multimodal mobility, delayed emergency response that would continue to affect the quality of life and inhibit economic growth in the city center. And the other is to maintain the integrity of the interstate highway system in the form of queues that back up onto mainline I-5, which impacts regional mobility, including freight, and decreases safety. I-5 mobility needs to be maintained without impacting safety. So what's the problem here? This is our 2045 PM peak hour forecast if we don't do anything else than what's already planned. And you can see right now, 320th, just west of I-5, is moving about 4,000 vehicles per hour in the evening peak, which roughly translates to about 41,000 vehicles a day. And we anticipate seeing a 50% growth in traffic volume westbound and about a 30% increase eastbound. So, yeah, if you think traffic's bad now, that's the bottom line. So what are we doing? We're trying to figure out different alternatives to address these multiple needs. And so, and I should mention too that we're talking about, this is not just a city staff process. We have project partners in the form of Federal Highways Administration, Washington State Department of Transportation, Puget Sound Regional Council, King County Metro, King County Roads, Pierce Transit, and Sound Transit, and the tribes. So all those folks have a say in how we've defined the alternatives and how we've scored them. So these evaluation criteria are, one of the important things for us is decreasing congestion on 320th, and maintaining, improving access to and from the city center, providing opportunities to travel around rather than through the city center core, improved non-motorized mobility, and improving safety for the general public, both I-5, interstate ramps, 320th corridor, and the entire study area. Those were separate, all separate criteria. Have a project designed for the feasibility and constructability, addressing impacts to neighborhoods, parks, wetlands, and cultural resources, and commercial and industrial properties and future land uses, and be acceptable to impacted residents and the public. So that's a long want list, and so we've tried to do our best in evaluating those. One of the early tasks for us was to demonstrate to WSDOT and Federal Highways that we can't solve the problems just by building stuff other than the interchange. And this is just a simple map of all the different improvements that we looked at without modifying the freeway interchange. And as we had discovered back in 2009, we could do all these improvements and we'd still not be able to significantly change the level of congestion on 320th. So underscoring the need that we need to be able to get on and off I-5 in the city center area in a way besides 320th. Now, we get a lot of questions about, well, why don't you put one at 288th or 296 or 304th or 336th? And so we did take a look at that again, and the results were the same as they were back in 2009, that very little traffic was diverted from 320th by constructing all these improvements, alternative interchanges. Plus, getting a new interchange permitted is far more difficult than modifying an existing one. So it basically boiled down to 312th or 324th. We ended up eliminating 312th as an alternative. And some of the constraints involved had to do with Sound Transit, and so we would have had to add a second off-ramp, which again triggers this bigger process to get it permitted with the feds. We'd also have to work around the light rail line, but we're limited as to when we can do that. Basically between about 1 and 5 in the morning is the only thing we could do anything over the tracks. So turned out that this wasn't very compatible with what WSDOT wants to preserve as options for what they will do with I-5 in the future. And they're very, they own a big chunk of land there, and they want to make sure that it will continue to serve the needs that they're responsible for. And so any changes to that, they will scrutinize very closely. So 312th also had a high potential for impacts to Steel Lake Park and the neighborhoods, particularly east of the freeway, which resulted in a lack of acceptance from those folks. And 312th, it serves the city center, but not the core. It's only in the north boundary of the city center frame. So, I know, this is complicated, but basically the bottom line is what scored the best was alternative 2I, which I will show you here in a minute. And I'll go through quickly what the other options looked like. But this is just illustrative of what how all the different criteria that we were trying to weigh and how we weighed them. So the cheapest alternative with 324th would have been this split diamond. What that means is all the ramp traffic for both 312th and 324th would have gone through the same intersections. And we could make this work in 2045, just barely. But the southbound off-ramp at 320th, there would be very little flexibility. And so if our land use forecasts were too low for reality, it'll blow up. And so any other significant changes, like a comprehensive plan change that would increase the size of the city center, would make this fail as well. So we had the grade separated ramps. So the way this works is northbound traffic, for instance, would exit, and then the ramp would split, one that goes to 320th, one that goes to 324th, and same thing with the on-ramps, and these would be grade separated. The comparison I make is Northeast 45th and 50th in Seattle and U District. Similar to that.
Or 4th and 8th in Bellevue.
Yes, on 405, yes. So, so this provides the flexibility that we're after, and it works. The challenge is when we, on this southbound on-ramp, so first the two ramps have to merge and then have a settling out length of ramp before that merges with the freeway main line. And as that works its way south, it starts impinging on where Sound Transit is their assumed light rail alignment for the Tacoma Dome extension. So if we ask them to move, there will be some additional impact to Belmore Park residents. So that's probably the downside. We don't have exact numbers on that, and that would be part of the environmental analysis to quantify that. So in looking at ways to avoid that, we considered this alternative 2H, which the southbound off from 324th would merge with the southbound on-ramp from 320th. Both would go through the intersection at 324th and then have just a single on-ramp from there. So this works a little bit. Now, one of the challenges is most of the people coming off of 324th are going to turn right. Most of the folks here want to go straight. So they're weaving across each other. And the distance that we have to allow that to occur is not really adequate. Basically, the backup from the ramp intersection could go all the way to and even past that merge area. And so that creates some safety issues and also limits the flexibility to incorporate or be able to accept future land use changes as well. So amongst the ramp configurations, we were moving ahead with alternative 2B. So then we looked at, okay, how do we treat these ramp intersections? And the base case, we started off assuming those ramps would have traffic signals at them, which are expensive to operate and maintain. Every signalized intersection is about $4,000 a year to just maintain and operate. And they're not that efficient. One option that was considered is this one-way couplet concept where westbound traffic would be on 320th, eastbound would be on 324th. And most of the businesses were not too wild about this, the mall being the exception. But also, opposition arose from King County Metro because they're planning on having another rapid ride line on 320th. And so this would disrupt that. And then if we modified the roadway cross-section to allow them to stay on 320th eastbound, all the benefits of reduced delay with a couplet would go away. Alternatives 2D and 2E involve building a loop ramp from 324th to head northbound. And the idea being that if volumes were really high or increased dramatically because of land use changes, that a loop ramp would have less delay. Well, two things with that. One is it turned out not to be that much less delay. And secondly, this line here is the outline of IRG's proposed warehouse. So there'd be some issues in getting the property for that. We talked about alternative 2F, which is a new type of interchange called a diverging diamond. There's about 35 or 40 of them in the U.S. right now. The first one in Washington State's being built in Lacey. It has fairly high capacity and so far a good safety record. And it's very flexible at accepting changes in volumes. However, it essentially requires a second bridge across I-5 and a little bit more right-of-way. But basically, eastbound and westbound cross each other on each end of the freeway overpasses. And it ends up being very efficient because there's no turn phases. So those intersections would be very efficient. Finally, we looked at 2G, I, and J, which were 2G was the split diamond approach, and J was the hybrid approach. So, but all three of those, the ramp terminals would be roundabouts. And we found this to have the most flexibility for future land use changes, and the best safety record, and the least maintenance and operation expenses. So right now, what we're proposing is and we, meaning the committee, is proposed alternative 2I. And should something like Belmore Park generate a heck of a lot more traffic, we could modify that to the diverging diamond, which could handle bigger volumes than what we're anticipating right now. So another issue is how to handle non-motorized, and this is important because we see this as an opportunity to connect the existing BPA trail with planned extensions east of the freeway. And so what's in the comprehensive plan right now shows just our regular arterial sidewalks and bike lanes on both sides of 324th. To get more of a trail feeling to it, we looked at doing a shared use path on one side. The other side would still have the standard sidewalk widths with planter strip, but this would be a wider treatment on one side, preferably the north side here, because that would connect to the trail through DeVita. And finally, if we were to do a diverging diamond interchange, this is an example of how you would get the pedestrians. They would basically be crossing only one lane at a time or two lanes at a signalized intersection. So that works pretty well for non-motorized. As I mentioned, this is what's planned with the bike facility, so BPA trail down here. The plan is to extend that along 324th through DeVita, up 32nd Avenue, and then extend the trail under the power lines to the east. That corridor would connect to the interurban trail in Auburn and continue to connect to the Sioux Creek Trail in Covington eventually, and even go out past Maple Valley, connecting to the Cedar River Trail. So this is an example of how that could look. And we'd be proposing a 12-foot path with a 6-foot planter strip to separate, as opposed to a 12-foot curbside sidewalk. So, this is all about planning for the future of the city. And so we're looking at options to try and manage and improve things for not only cars and trucks, but improve access to the transit facilities, buses and light rail. And having the shared use path improves facilities for bicycles, skateboards, and scooters, and pedestrians and people with wheelchairs, and also providing better connections to the light rail station, where all the buses will be converging as well. So, early on, we talked about the possibility of we might need to add additional access across the freeway, so we looked at 312th and 32nd. We've determined that those are not necessary to make the interchange work and alleviate the traffic on 320th. In addition, as what we are proposing as part of the project, that we would convert the outside lanes on 320th to HOV lanes, and eventually that would be 6 lanes, it's 3 lanes each direction all the way out to Military Road. And that's already shown in the comprehensive plan. So what we're doing with 312th and 32nd, they're in the comprehensive plan now. We're not proposing to change them. They just wouldn't be as part of this project. So with respect to public outreach, the social media is probably the most effective way of getting responses. So we reached over 34,000 people that way. The online open house brought in quite a few. And we also conducted stakeholder briefings of businesses, stakeholder interviews. We had briefings, we call this environmental justice group briefings, but basically making sure we're providing outreach to historically underrepresented communities. And then we also had the tabling events, Steel Lake Park and 4th of July. So what we heard overall was concerns about traffic congestion. They offered several recommendations on interchange modifications, concerned about local impacts, and making sure we were providing safe options for bikes and peds. Also making sure that we're coordinating our efforts with WSDOT and King County Metro and Sound Transit. And also minimizing environmental impacts and preserving open space as much as possible. So this is an outline of the attendees we got from different public meetings. Again, concerns about changing traffic patterns, possibly diverting traffic into neighborhoods. That was primarily along 312th. General agreement that 324th is a better option, and agreement that the couplet was not a good idea. Concerns about impacts to the natural environment, especially trees and wetlands. With the environmental justice outreach, we heard concerns about displacement of vulnerable community members, mobility access for older adults and those with disabilities, general support of the project, and let's see. So one of the alternatives was also emergency service access, and that was one of the things that we were also concerned about. We had police and fire involved in that discussion. A lot of questions about how we're going to get this thing funded. And one issue about why aren't we looking at 288th? And so we explained that to him. We had the online open house and the in-person open house. So the questions we were asking is, do you like this? Does this address your concerns? Which of the intersection options at the off-ramps were preferred, and which option would you prefer for the bike lanes or shared use paths? What would help you access transit better? And the responses we got that non-motorized access is a priority. They were also expressed concerns about the weaves in the hybrid option, concerned about coordinating with Sound Transit, concerned about displacement from Belmore residents, and one thing that gladdened my heart was preference for roundabouts. And then I think everybody's in agreement, traffic congestion is a major concern in Federal Way. So, the steps forward from here is seeking the council's concurrence to move into preliminary design and environmental documentation for the preferred alternative at 324th. So we'll be doing a special council meeting tomorrow night on the preferred solution. November 19th is, we would propose that the council adopts the preferred solution, and that would enable us to start the new year with preliminary design and environmental documentation, addressing known issues. About all the environmental processes would also have additional community outreach, and initiate our outreach to legislators for funding, design, and construction. So, options considered. Option one, authorize staff to adopt the preferred alternative of South 320th Street and South 324th Street interchange modification with grade-separated ramps and roundabouts for the city center access Phase 1 environmental process update. Option 2 is do not authorize staff to adopt this as the preferred alternative and provide direction. The mayor's recommendation is forwarding option 1 to the November 19th City Council consent agenda for approval. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rick. And let's make sure we don't have any signs that look like that one.
Exactly.
Committee members, any questions? Councilmember Johnson.
Just briefly, obviously, there's a lot of concerns, and I think I'll save a lot of my questions for tomorrow, but Rick, if you could just kind of briefly provide any input on, like, at this point of the process for us as a committee, you know, what exactly is the ask, aside from just moving it forward to tomorrow? Is it really, that's it?
Well, yeah, so certainly tomorrow is intended to have the entire council participating in the discussion. Mm-hmm. And if there's any additional information we need to provide for that, that would be useful to us. And beyond that, just create an opportunity for the public to comment as well. Mm-hmm. So making sure that we're trying to get all the issues addressed, either for what we know now or making sure that that gets into the environmental documentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One question I have, this would be for, but it's 324th, obviously continues on to Pacific Highway. And I think having some explanation as to what the lane treatments would be. I think my understanding is it would be a 5-lane or a 4-lane.
So what's in the comprehensive plan right now is 2 lanes each direction with a 2-way left turn lane, bike lanes and sidewalks. So certainly as part of this analysis, if people would rather see the shared use path on one side, we could look at modifying to reflect that. There will also probably be some additional intersection improvements necessary at the intersection with Pack Highway. We also know that access to Belmar Park is an ongoing issue, and we will need to be prepared to address that.
Okay, good. All right. Unless there's some other questions, I would entertain a motion at this point.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the November 19th, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second?
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, Rick, thank you. I know there's a lot there. Next, we're going to have the ordinance amending the Federal Revised Code Title 19, Division 3, Mitigation and Fees, adding a new chapter to the Surface Water Management System Development Charges. And we have Teresa Thurlow.
Good evening, Committee Chair Kopeng, Deputy Mayor Honda, committee members. We don't have any engaged members of the public.
They're on YouTube right now, so.
There we go. So tonight I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the proposed ordinance to amend Title 19 of the Federal Way Revised Code, and that's to add a surface and stormwater system development charge. So the question before you tonight is, should City Council adopt a proposed ordinance adding a new chapter to Title 19 Federal Way Revised Code relating to the assessment of surface and stormwater utility system development charges, also known as SDCs? So a little bit background about the stormwater utility. It is a utility. It does provide services as water provides services or wastewater provides services. Our services are primarily flood reduction and control, compliance with the Clean Water Act, water quality and habitat and conservation, and restoration. So our system is composed of drainage. So we aim to collect the water, get it off the streets, transport it to the local waterways. And to do that, we have these pipes and vaults and catch basins and other structures. And as I mentioned, we carry it to the local waterways. Well, the one thing that affects our system capacity the most is development. So any increase in impervious surfaces has an effect on system. It increases the flow that goes into the pipes. Development usually creates more impervious surface. An example here is in 2007 off of 356. You can see here we had this large housing development, and then there's other smaller development that happened here, creating more impervious surface. When we had our rate study done, they recommended to us that we consider a system development charge, similar to a water service connection charge, wastewater service connection charge. This would be a stormwater service connection charge. Call it a system development charge. So the system development charge is a one-time fee. It's paid at the time of development or redevelopment, and it provides equity between the existing and new customers for the cost of development and the cost of the infrastructure to support that, namely, for my purposes, stormwater. It provides a capital source of funding for growth. So as new development impacts the system and causes capacity increases, this would be how we would pay to have the capital projects to manage that capacity. So how does the system development charge work? Well, if you're a single-family residential, not part of a large subdivision or a short plat, so standalone, you're one ESU, equivalent service unit, and you would be charged for one unit, which is proposed to be $981 for 2020. But if you are, let's say that you are this site here in Federal Way, and you want to add a new building and then increase your parking. So let's say that you added all of the impervious surfaces shown here, and it came out to 13.75 ESUs. Remember, an ESU is 3,200 square feet for one unit. Your system development charge to the developer to do this, or to the property owner to do this, would be $13,489. And that would be a one-time charge. This is not the same thing as the surface water utility charge that happens annually for all parcels within the city. It's a one-time fee at the time of development for any increase in impervious surface. So let's say you're the mall. The mall is pretty much already 100% impervious surface, and let's say they wanted to redevelop. Well, they in fact would probably not incur a system development charge because they are already built out They would not be adding new impervious surface. But as you see in this demonstration here, we added impervious surface, so this would incur a charge. To give you a little apples to apples, that same 44,000 square feet of new impervious surface that I just showed you, in Renton, they have a flat fee, $1,900. Doesn't matter what it is, it's $1,900. The other cities in surrounding areas do, these are the cities that charge a system development charge in a similar manner to what we are proposing. And for that 44,000 square feet addition I just showed you, you can see the comparison of the charges that would be assessed to the developer. And as you can see, Federal Way is on the lower end of that scale for that charge. So what happens without a system development charge? Well, basically the ratepayers are the ones that are impacted by development then. So without charging the developers a system development charge, our needs to increase the system, install new catch basins, install new pipe, that would be on the unfairly assessed to the ratepayers. And to give you an idea of monetary impact, for about 20 linear feet of 18 to 36 inch pipe, you're talking about $15,000. And that's 20 feet. That's from me to Councilmember Asefa Dawson. I mean, that is not a lot. It's a very expensive process, the underground infrastructure is. So the timeline of what we've done to date, of course, the consultant study that I just mentioned, we went to the Planning Commission because this affects Title 19 and requires their review. And we went to them for an informational session and then a public hearing and discussions. And then on October 30th, they did decide to recommend adoption after we'd been there a couple times to discuss their concerns. And then tonight, of course, we're at the Land Use Transportation Public Meeting, and then the timeline, the appeal for this ends November 6th, the first reading, the second reading, and then a notice in the newspaper in December, and adoption for implementation to all development applicants in 2020, starting in 2020. After 2020, the charge would be assessed, evaluated each year to determine if there's an inflation rate that should be applied to it, and it will be published with the impact fee charge, the City of Federal Ways fee schedule. There we go, that's the word I wanted. So the City of Federal Ways fee schedule is where you would see all of those changes in the future. So the options before you tonight are to adopt the proposed ordinance or to not adopt the proposed ordinance and provide direction to staff. The mayor's recommendation is to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading at the 19th of November 2019 City Council meeting. And I'm available for questions.
Teresa, thank you for the presentation. Committee members, any questions? Let's go to Councilmember Asefa Dawson.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. My question is around the fees that you showed us. Why is Federal Way so low, and how can we adjust that?
It's based on, so the fee calculation is based on total build-out of the city. So what do we have available for impervious surface? So you have to take out parks, you have to take out conservation property, wetlands, critical areas, things like that. So what's the total build-out of the city available? What's the total value of our current infrastructure? And what's the value of what would be put in place in the future? So RCW actually provides a little bit of guidelines for the methodology, and they provide a lot of guidelines for water and sewer districts. Our consultant combined that and case law to do the methodology for our build-out. It's just a matter of what our system currently is and what our build-out availability is.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. Does this include all development, and would Sound Transit, when they develop downtown and over by Costco, would they pay this too?
It's all development that changes impervious surface, increases impervious surface. So from 2020, any applicants that come in, their development review would include an assessment of how much in total area of square foot they increase the impervious surface. And across the board, school districts, Sound Transit, commercial, residential, across the board, it would be looked at and assessed if there's an increase in impervious surface.
So take for instance the school district, so they're replacing schools. And I'll just talk about Lake Grove. So Lake Grove's completely gone, they're down to the dirt, they're doing things with the dirt right now. So they're replacing a building, so would they have this cost because they're just replacing a building that they took off of the property?
So if that development was coming in January and they were replacing a building, if they replaced it with about the same size and the same amount of impervious surface, no, they wouldn't have a charge.
Okay.
But let's say they doubled the size of the building and took out any green space that they might have had, then yes, they would have a fee or a charge on that increase in the amount of impervious surface. So let's say the school added a building here and the parking lot. So anything that they added in the way of impervious surface, that would be what would be assessed a development charge. And it's pretty much across the board.
Does unincorporated King County have this fee too?
Yes, it does. They don't apply it in the same manner that we are proposing. I'd have to go back and provide details on exactly how it is. Seattle also has one, the jurisdictions I showed you, and then there's a few other jurisdictions as well. They just don't do it apples to apples. I couldn't give you an actual comparison,
Okay.
so I didn't include them. Same with unincorporated King County. I couldn't give you the same kind of assessment. I'd have to actually go through a longer calculation to figure out what the equivalent would be.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa, thank you for your presentation. I think a couple points. I think, number one, you've made it very clear this is additional impervious surfaces. So if the mall theoretically was completely redeveloped, there would be no surface water impact.
It's fairly unlikely.
But there would be sewage or sewer and water utility probably, but that's completely different. So that's what we're talking about here. Now, the flip side of this, and this is really essentially like a transportation impact fee.
It is very similar, yes.
Okay.
It falls under a different RCW, though.
Of course, but it's the same principle. Basically, the developer is paying for the impact they will have on the infrastructure as a whole, just like when a development comes in, it pays for the increased capacity on the roads as a result of their development.
Very similar.
So a very similar principle. And these are real costs. So right now, they're being absorbed by
The utility,
the current
ratepayers.
property owners, the ratepayers. So we're really basically, we've been subsidizing new development in essence. And so we want to share the burden. I think that's a more equitable way to do this. So I appreciate the focus of the Surface Water Management team on looking at how to do that, and I think this is a good solution. On the flip side, I know at this Town Square Park, we developed a portion of the park with impervious surfaces. It was called low impact development. And are there ways for the implementation of low impact development to positively reduce the impact fees? Is that a part of our fee schedule?
That is not. We would never look at reducing the capacity of the system, even if they took out impervious surfaces. Our system would still remain the same.
Right.
So it's cumulative effect over time, but no, we did not include anything.
But if somebody does an environmentally responsible thing and says, I have, 50% of my property is impervious, I'm going to make 25% of it pervious, and there's, I'm sorry, it's a new development. So it doesn't matter. Or it's a redevelopment of an old site, so it doesn't matter. We're not going to give a credit. So I guess that's the
No-
key.
no
Okay, all right.
credits.
Thank you. I got there. Thank you. Okay. All right. Any further questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Teresa. By looking at the prices that you provided, we relatively have a lower price compared to nearby city, with the exception of Renton. So my question is this: will this new price structure is adequate for us to have enough, source of funding to, fund whatever that we need to do?
It should. That's part of the whole methodology for the calculation, was to basically look at total build-out. Some of the other jurisdictions, their total build-out availability isn't as much. Federal Way does have a lot of green space right now, so our availability for total build-out compared to some of the more impervious surfaces in, say, I'm not sure which one some of them have not as much available. So that affected their rates.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on November 19, 2019.
Second?
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Teresa. Now we have Doc Hanson, and we're going to be speaking about the acceptance of the grant offered by the State Department of Commerce and the notice of intent to annex property at I-5 and 320th. Obviously, we'll start with the acceptance of the grant offered by the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. This one should go pretty quick. I came to you before last month indicating that I needed your go-ahead to apply for this grant. Now I need a go-ahead to accept it. We did receive the grant, but it has to be accepted by the council. What we asked for was $100,000, and one of the things that I would like to point out are these items that are up here. These are the basic items that we're going to do. We're first of all going to obtain a city consultant, which is going to be all at our cost. But after that, the quantifying of the existing and projected housing, evaluation of comprehensive plan in relation to that, the research and development strategies to obtain that. We will be providing a very full public participation program. And then finally, we will draft and adopt a housing action plan. The council will be part of that. Planning Commission will be part of that plan. We can keep you up to date. We definitely will keep other members. We will be keeping the public that is interested in this in it. And there is no requirement for any type of housing to be adopted within this plan. However, we are looking at the homelessness, affordable housing, and then also all housing, including market housing needs within the city. The other thing that's unique about this, we're trying to make this creative in the region. There are 6 jurisdictions that are applying for this, and we're looking at approximately contributing about $20,000 for regional data, and perhaps the establishment of a model that will allow for all decision makers in all the cities to come up and have a basis upon which they can decide what types of housing they want to within the region. This is going to be helpful in terms of making South King County have more political clout within King County. Right now, it's been Seattle or nothing. And if there is something that is established within South King County, amongst these 6 jurisdictions, South King County would actually be the second largest next to Seattle in terms of its population. So the mayor has made a proposal to accept the grant, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Doc. Any questions by the committee or council members? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move to accept, is this the right one? Yeah. Accept monies from the State Department of Commerce in creating a city housing action plan to the November 19, 2019 council consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Doc. Now on to notice of intent to annex property at I-5 and 320.
Thank you. We did this before you is, and I'll explain it in greater detail. This before you is to accept the petition that was submitted to us for annexation on 320th. We did receive this application on September 26th, and that was their intent to annex. The participants who submitted the application have 16% of the total value of the property. It's only necessary for 10% the valuation of the property to actually, they're able to submit this petition to the council. And the total area of this particular site is 21.44 acres. So you can see it's north of 320th, east of I-5. This is 32nd and 316th. If the property is annexed, there is a group, the Pape group, who wishes to establish their, we've already had a pre-application with the Pape group, and their intent is to develop a large Kenworth service and retail business on the site. And we are in the process of discussing that with them right now. The annexation plan, or the pre-annexation comprehensive plan, shows this as a business community that was community business. And this was done in the year 2003, 4. This was done in 2004. It used to be another zone, and there was somebody else that was actually making a proposal on this. And they'd asked for that rezone at that particular time, or that categorization. So when we go through the annexation, it will automatically go to, or you can consider this as the zone. There's 7 different parcels. There's 3 single family, 3 vacant, and 1 duplex. Now, this is what is tough for everybody to quite understand. In fact, there's a lot of experts that don't understand this because it's clear as mud in RCW, so I'll try to break it down in terms of what this process is. The applicant has to meet with the city officials and staff to discuss the annexation, then the applicant submits the 10%. Now, what we're doing right now is this stage. We're at this point in the process. We're going to hold a public hearing, or excuse me, a public meeting to accept or deny the petition. And that's just to indicate whether you're going to accept it and allow that applicant to seek the 60% petition before the council can have hearing or actually consider the annexation through public hearing. There has to be 60% of the value of the land that's being annexed within that petition. So that petition is submitted to us, it comes back to you. You have the option at that time to accept, modify, or reject that application after public hearing. Once the public hearing is done, if you decide to have the annexation, then a notice of intention to annex is sent to the Boundary Review Board, and that's about a 60-day review period. They'll actually hold a public hearing within that 60 days, and they will approve or object to the annexation. That appeal period can last a significant amount of time. We do not anticipate that. Once that hearing is done, the city annexes the property by ordinance. Now, we're anticipating that If there are no appeals, we do not expect any appeals. This could be done by the end of February to the beginning of March. But that's going to be riding on the horse pretty fast through holidays. So the action required, I want to reemphasize that what we're talking about is just the acceptance of the petition. It's not a vote to annex the property at this particular time. It's just to accept the petition. And you can accept, modify, or decline. At the 60% petition public hearing, you'll be asked these questions. Will the city accept this? Will the city adopt the interim or initial comprehensive plan and zoning map, which I had indicated was commercial business? And will the city require the annexed area to assume their proportion of existing city indebtedness? So it would be looking at the area that's being annexed, taking on their part of the debt that the city has, so that they would take their share of indebtedness of the city.
Doc, could I jump in for 1 second?
Sure.
Chair Kopang, the last slide there indicated that determination would be made at the 60% stage after we had gone through the voting process to determine that. And those determinations by the City Council will actually be made at the next hearing of whether to accept the 10% petition, because essentially we're going to be asking the voters to take on their fair share of the city's indebtedness, and that needs to be clearly stated on the voting form that will be given to them for the petition. So it says, this is what happens if you go into it. So that'll be happening at the next meeting.
So the mayor's recommendation is that the city council accept the 10% petition so that they can begin the process of the 60%, and that the city council indicate that the landowners would assume the property's proportionate share of the city's outstanding debt. Any questions?
Before, I'm going to lead this time. I just wanted to make sure, Pepe is well aware of the fact that they would be taking on a share of the indebtedness of the city if they were to be annexed, or have the property they're proposing to buy be annexed.
They actually have a consultant that is an expert in annexation.
Yeah.
He indicated to them that, and we did also within the DRC.
Okay. So this is, no property owners are going to be surprised by this. That's all
No,
I'm concerned.
they are not.
Yeah, okay, very good. All right, committee members and council members. Deputy Mayor Honda, start
Thank
with you
you.
this time.
I have two questions. Is this the only way that we can annex property into the city, or is there another method?
There's 3 methods, I believe. This is not the only method. The city can directly annex property, but it would be going out to a vote for that annexation, or working with the parties to actually make the petition to annex. But there are other ways to do this. This is the direction that the PAPE and this landowner decided to go.
And so, is there a way where all landowners would vote on, all landowners involved would actually vote on it? Is that one?
No.
No?
Not unless the council, it's interesting you asked that question. In 2000, let's see, the first time was in 1998, I believe. The first action by the council was that actually occur, that everyone that owns property on this sign this and agree to the annexation. In a lot of annexations, most annexations, you will not have everyone agree with it. So you can ask for that. That's been done before. Mayor's recommendation is that you do not. This will be made clear in the petition itself, that anybody that signs it will take on the indebtedness, and also if they will be notified that the annexation is actually occurring. That's what the purpose of the public hearing is.
Does King County have any say in this?
No. Well, they have, excuse me, they do have say at the time of the boundary review board
Okay.
hearing.
And my last question is, does this include the property that is potentially a cannabis store?
Yes.
Yes.
And so if this were to occur and this becomes part of the city, so then we would have 5 potential cannabis stores and not 4? Is that correct?
I,
We have 4 licenses.
We have 4 licenses, and I don't believe that number would change. But we let us look into that question to make sure that we follow up with you exactly what that would mean. But it's my understanding that Pape has an option to purchase all of this property.
that's correct.
And
Okay.
if this went through, then that development would likely not proceed, as had been indicated previously.
Okay, thank you.
I might add to that, just for clarification on the Pepe site. This site to be developed is going to involve a lot of capital in road improvement, in turn lanes, signalization. There would have to be a lot of work done in order to do this. Pepe has been made aware of this. The shop has also been made aware of this. Pape has the money to make the improvements and have indicated that they wish to, at least to this point. We hadn't heard anything from the, as you call it, the pot shop. Cannabis.
Councilmember Stefanos?
Yeah. Can you explain to me the 10% and the 60%? I'm not clear on that yet, please.
The fourth bullet? Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, yeah, or yes. 10% petition and 60% petition.
Okay, the difference is, the first one, the 10%, allows that individual, any individual within that piece of property, so if they own 10% of the value of a large piece of property, they can petition that jurisdiction to have the entire piece of property annexed. The city or the jurisdiction can make a determination whether or not they wish to accept that, to modify it, or just reject it entirely. If they accept it, then they're basically saying, petitioner, go forth and get 60% of the land value of all the properties that you're asking for annexation, to also sign a petition in agreement to the annexation. It's at that particular, the 60% is most important because that allows the public hearing to occur and allows it to come back to you for a decision.
So what does the 10% do then?
It just gets it.
Starts the process.
It just starts the
That's it.
process, that's all.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I know we had a property on 320th that was 100% owned, and they requested to be annexed into Federal Way, and we went through the same process. They had more than 10%, and they had the 60% already too, so it was easier, but it still had to go through this process. I talked to Economic Director Tim Johnson regarding this Pape project, and he said that these particular types of facilities don't have a dramatic impact on traffic, but they have a substantial impact on revenue from the standpoint this is equivalent to about 6 car dealerships in revenue generated. So this would be a major benefit to the city. Not only would we get a great corporate partner that would contribute to our city, but we'd get the revenue that's associated with that business as well. So I think in the end, this is it's a very good step forward for us, and very similar to the annexations that we did with both Weyerhaeuser and Enchanted Village years ago. So anyway, any additional questions? Another question?
Yes, I have 2. One, do the other property owners know that this petition has been submitted?
I don't know that all of the property owners have. I am fairly sure that they have been notified of this. The applicant has made purchase on all of the properties, I believe. They will be
Okay.
they will be notified if this is accepted and they have to get the 60%. We're
Great.
anticipating that they'll turn in a petition of around 90%.
Okay. And then my other question was on traffic, and because 320th is such a mess as it is, they will be doing a traffic impact study?
They will be
Or-
doing a traffic impact analysis, and they'll also be doing a parking study, because right now, the way our parking code is, they would be required to have 320 parking spots for approximately, what did we figure out, 3 peak hour trips,
Okay,
or less?
thank you.
So concurrency will be observed.
It will.
Okay, all right, very good. All right. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the 10% petition for annexation of the proposed property to the November 19th, 2019 council business agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Doc. All right, John Cole, welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about the Citywide Greenway Plan, and this is your first time addressing land use and transportation, so.
It is.
At least our committee. So we'll be gentle,
All right, thank you very much.
but definitely look forward to hearing from you. So welcome to Federal Way.
Chair Kopang, committee and council members, my name is John Cole. I'm a capital projects engineer for the city of Federal Way, and I'm here to present an update on the 2019 Greenway project. The project was advertised for bids October 4th and October 11th. Bids were due October 18th. Unfortunately, no bids were received. Staff recommends, what's that?
The smiley face.
Yeah,
Or the
right?
frowny face, the frowny face.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Staff recommends removing the sign installation work from the bid package and having King County perform this work, potentially. Staff also recommends combining associated pavement markings from the Greenway project with the 2020 pavement markings, which would be Schedule C, as well as the uncompleted 2019 pavement markings, which would be Schedule B, to provide a more large, more attractive package to potential bidders. Staff anticipates bidding this revised project in early 2020. Construction is anticipated to start spring of 2020 with an estimated substantial completion date of summer of 2020. So the options considered is to authorize staff to revise the project delivery method and rebid for Citywide Greenway Plan and return to the LUTC and council for bid award, further reports, and authorization rebidding the project. Or option 2, do not authorize the staff to revise the project delivery method and rebid this project and provide direction to staff. Mayor's recommendation is to forward option 1 to the November 19th City Council consent agenda for approval. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
John, thank you for your presentation. I've got one question.
Yes, sir.
Do you anticipate any challenge whatsoever with us getting bids received based on the reconfiguration of the bid?
No, I think we believe that it'll improve our chances. We're going to take nearly 500 signs, some mounted on existing posts, some new posts, and we are looking at King County to mount those signs and then separate out the sharrows, which are the bicycle pavement markings, in with our previous pavement markings, and look at more of a specific bid package for bidders to look at, where they won't have to try to have someone do both.
Okay, very good. Any further questions? Okay, all right, hearing none, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I've moved to forward option 1 to the November 19, 2019 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, Okay, motion carries unanimously. John, you made it.
Thank you.
We saved it to the end, didn't we? Well, we've got Bill Vidino, so, anyway. Bill Vidino, we're going to talk about airport issues
Sorry, it's
now.
almost midnight on the clock in the back of the room.
Yeah, it's been that way for the whole meeting, though, so, yeah. Yeah,
Stand
that
by.
clock, for the audience, the clock in the back of the room is at 15 to 12 and has been all day long. So, anyway, thankfully, we're not that late. That's right. Well, it'll be right in a few hours.
Oh, members of the council, here we are. So here's your monthly update. I'm still working on trying to make this a little bit more erudite and working towards a checklist, but I think you'll find this pretty darn fast.
Okay?
First of all, as Mr. Dave Berger, one of our great, wonderful, technically proficient citizens, has brought you up to date on, we've got the continuing Department of Commerce study, and the big news is the public meeting. And we'll be getting the preliminary results. I just received them in the email, and I'll send them on to you and then put them into something that's a lot more bite-sized for not only you folks, but the citizens that are more and more subscribing to an email that I've put together so they can keep up to date on these issues as well, too. But basically, it boils down to noise, takeoff, landing, taxiway, the health issues, property values, the increase in air traffic, and the failed noise packages. These are all the concerns that are layering on this commerce study that are irrefutable about what needs to be taken care of. And so I think we're going to get some solutions from this study because, like I said, I think it's going to be pretty irrefutable. This is the same group that did the study for the third runway back in 1999, Stantec. But Dave Berger basically gave you pretty much everything you need to know about that. Coming on the horizon, as we will be discussing, I believe, in the next couple meetings at Council, the legislative agenda, Mike Pelliciotti, representative, will be resubmitting the package that'll bring Federal Way into the area where we can get these sound noise packages. And also, there's discussion from Tina Orwell of legislation to work on failed packages because that radius, 3-mile radius that had, or the 6-mile radius, they've had failed packages. That's going to be part of the federal agenda as well, too. And then, as you noted from the Seattle Times, the 26-member group that is discussing another airport designation by 2022, they are now meeting in earnest. There's 26 members, electeds, non-electeds, lots of people who not only represent citizens but industry, but they all agree that we do not want to have this airport over capacity because it hurts everybody. As you know, at one point I was doing technology for UPS, and sometimes I was there at 3 in the morning, and the mad scramble waiting for the cargo plane to land at Boeing Field to get the freight there in time to get onto the trucks that would then get to the brown trucks. It's a huge shuffle trying to get everybody their Amazon packages and their other packages. So another airport is definitely needed, not only for what it's going to do to our citizens as it increases, but for other reasons as well, too. Then, of course, you've got in front of you, and this will be discussed, I believe, on the 19th, the council meeting, and these letters continue to be drafted and changed. The 6 cities, if we opt along, but it looks like the other 5 cities will be signing on to letters that not only go to the FAA about our concerns, but also to our congressional delegation. And so what those basically break into is moving forward on noise abatement as designated by the 2018 FAA Reauthorization Act and reinvestment in failed insulation for those communities that had it. And that means, of course, we would have better insulation when Mike Pellicciotti's efforts get it to work into our areas as well, too. And then, of course, there's other pieces, but basically legislations that continue to work on areas concerned. That means health. That means ultrafine particles. And so it's a great proposal that proposals that our congressional delegations are working on, and they need, as they say, our air cover. And then, of course, those specifics include Representative Adam Smith's Protecting Airport Communities Particle Emissions Act, Representative Lynch's Air Traffic Noise and Pollution Consensus Act, And then, of course, there are other pieces of legislation out there about secondary noise mitigation, the packages that have failed. So not only is that going to take place statewide, it's going to take place nationally as well, too. And then, of course, even investments in the future for, I mean, we've talked with some of our communities, they talk about hyperloops and other ways of doing it. There's also going to be a look into the future as well, too. So those two letters are in front of you. I will keep sending you modifications, and then we'll discuss those more in depth. Then, of course, as you're aware, we continue to try to figure out what to do about the START, the SeaTac Airport Roundtable. And the mayor has sent a letter in response saying, well, I will meet with you with the other two affected cities. And so we have one city there, and I believe we'll have one city here in the next few days. So all three cities will be united to have that meeting. And then, of course, the mayor will be discussing with you all where we go from there. But as you saw in his letter, and this is for the public watching at home, the dialogue will be on a future path that will focus on airport issues that maximize collaboration between our cities and the commission. So those words are all very well chosen. And thanks to John Reesing, I spent Saturday, right before the Husky game, at a great workshop on the environmental justice aspects of the NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. What's interesting here is if we don't necessarily have an EIS for what's going on at the airport, if it's what they call an EA, an environmental assessment, there are a lot of environmental justice aspects that can be invoked, not only for this community, but there was no irony in the fact that this meeting took place at Beacon Hill. And I was watching on my little phone, my little flight tracker, and we're talking planes every 4 minutes minimum over Beacon Hill. And Beacon Hill is, like we are in Federal Way and Des Moines and Burien, very well affected as well, too. And so that might be another way to get where we need to go for our health and for the noise. And then, of course, as Dave Berger eloquently told you, and I will be at this meeting as well, we've got that second public meeting, and we'll get as many people there as we can, and they'll be giving their opinions, and I'll bring back not only their preliminary report, which I already have for you, but also just how people are responding to it as well, too. So, with that, any questions?
Bill, thank you for the update. Committee members, any questions? Deputy Mayor Honda.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Will the meeting on November 6th be televised or on YouTube? I already committed to 2 other meetings that night.
Not that I know of, but it doesn't mean I can't do something.
Okay.
I mean, it's a public kind of thing. I got 5 phone batteries now.
You know-
I'm going to get a new phone soon, but anyway. So, no, I'd like to at least have a recording for anybody who's curious. So let me see what I can do with that.
Okay, it's important for the whole region to watch if they
Right.
aren't able to get there, so
Correct.
hopefully in the future, maybe they could be doing something to broadcast it out.
Certainly.
I
That's a great idea.
know Burien does televise their council meetings, so.
So I'll check.
Yeah.
I'll check tonight, tomorrow morning, to see if they're going to do something like that. I think
Okay.
that'd be great.
That'd be great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other,
It's almost midnight.
any other points of order for the good of the order before we conclude our meeting? No, hearing none. Okay, the next meeting will be Monday, December 2nd, 2019, not 18, and be 5 p.m. right here, so. All right, meeting is adjourned. Yes.